Good morning. I'm convening the April 17th meeting of the California Unemployment Appeals Board. We're here in Sacramento, and we are both here in person and also via Zoom conference. The board will accept public comment on any agenda item or any other matter under its jurisdiction. Speakers are asked to limit their testimony to approximately 5 minutes on each agenda item or any other matter under the jurisdiction not listed on the agenda. The order of the agenda items may be changed to accommodate the board or the public. I'm going to take roll call. Michael Allen, Chair, is present. Vice Chair Kent Monning.
Present.
Member Ng.
Present.
Member Wachowski.
Here.
Thank you. It might not be too apparent, but I'm having an allergy attack, so if I sound a little bit raspy, it's something's in bloom. so if I sound a little raspy, that's why. So the next thing we'll do is I'm hoping that all the board members had an opportunity to review the minutes of our March 20th, 24 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
So we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Member Ng?
Aye.
Okay. So we've approved the minutes. So I'll begin with my report as the chair. Since our last meeting, we have closed over 1,172 cases. Of those 1,172 cases we've closed, 1,132 have been done with our California case management system, CAM system, and with 40 being done in the legacy system. The legacy system is what we used for many years and that we're closing out. So with that, the only thing I'd like to report is that I think on every board meeting, I always express my appreciation for all the levels of this organization. One thing I was commenting to one of my fellow board members this morning is that one thing with the CAM system, what's really kind of nice is that you start realizing how many different layers and how many different people are involved in the preparation of each case. Because, they say that we're in the paperless era, but don't believe it. There's still tons of paper that gets moved, even though it's put into electronic form. And so I just want to know, for all the people who work on these cases, we as board members know how difficult it is to be a field judge or to be a board author or to be working at all the different jobs that make this agency work well. And the last thing is always to express appreciation for my fellow board members who are very, very diligent, reasonable at times, and but who work very hard in terms of making sure that our caseloads are managed well and that we get our cases done on time. So my thanks to my fellow board members. With that, I'll ask for my fellow board members' reports, and I'll start with Vice Chair Kent Monning.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Hello, everybody. I wanted to just highlight with the end of our Department of Labor reporting concluding in March and looking at the numbers for March, I wanted to just highlight some great things, even though it might not look like it on its own. But last month, the AO case aging time was 54.4 days, and we dropped down to 44.1 days. So very close to the less than 40-day requirement by the Department of Labor. And then an FO also dropping from dropped below 100 days now at 96.9. So I just wanted to commend the field and AO for the ongoing hard work and wanted to ask, which I think will happen from our leadership today, but to provide some data points at the national context or national averages so that we get a little more context for these numbers, because I think when we're able to look at the national averages, that will really give us a better sense of the great work that everyone's been doing. So thank you.
Member Ng.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My report consists of a simple thing, which is my appreciation to the staff, the Sacramento staff and the local staff. I just recently, yesterday, had to do a swap out some old equipment, and it kind of took a village. Wanted to thank the Pasadena field office and also the local technology personnel, though. The boots on the ground here, and I really appreciate that. It's really made a tremendous difference to allow me to continue to respond to their requests for case adjudication. So just my thanks to everyone involved, and especially to our overall technology team that is always available 24/7.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Wachowski.
I too had an experience with the Oakland field office to swap out for a new computer earlier this month, and I did get a chance to talk to some of our field judges about the possibility of using Zoom. You know, we were talking about credibility findings, and listening to witnesses and saying, as the technology ripens, that seems to me a logical addition. I don't know what barriers there are for people to appear in Zoom, but we do that so often in Microsoft. I guess if I could figure out how to do that. The second thing is that there is legislation by Senator Durazo, SB 1434, which will change some of the contribution levels. It's not quite taking its final form, but they're having a hearing next week in the Labor Committee and the Senate. So I'm keeping an eye on that and sharing it with staff. It makes changes that would affect how we operate. And that's it.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is an opportunity for any public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to make a public comment?
Chair Allen, I have no hands raised for public comment at this time.
Well, thank you. So we'll now hear an update on the state of the agency and field workload from our Judge Michael Kutry, our Executive Director and Chief Judge. So,
good morning, Chair Allen,
Sure.
Board members. Thank you. I have a brief report today, but I'll get into some of the usual topics that we cover, such as workload, future planning, and a couple other more minor matters. As you see from your materials, the field office has closed 28,380 cases in March across all programs. A little over 25,000 of those were in UI and PUA, and that still remains the lion's share of our workload, which we're working through as fast as we can. Incoming appeals have really normalized to pre-pandemic levels. We're about 6% over what we received in February of 2020. So while we have that lull in activity, we're making as much progress on our backlog as possible. We reduced our open inventory by 4,771 cases. And as you recall from the last two meetings, we saw a brief spike in our open inventory, mostly because we were clearing out the pipeline that always exists between EDD and CUIAB for incoming transmittals. So there's not a lot backing that up now, and now we're back on the path of reducing our open inventory and expect to accelerate that in the coming months. We're still in very close contact with EDD about potential future workload on appeals. We know that EDD and the U.S. Department of Labor are still working out the last of the so-called buckets of payments that may be subject to determination. And so we've asked them to keep us in the loop on when that's going to occur so that we know what to expect in terms of incoming appeals. We're also monitoring, of course, the state unemployment rate and national unemployment rates to see if any additional workload could be coming from that. But so far, even given the unemployment rate slightly heightened at 5.3% in California, it's not resulted in a huge increase in appeals work for us. As Vice Chair Kent-Monning mentioned earlier, our case aging dropped below 100 days for the first time in, I believe, 23 months. As you'll recall, it was between 120 and 145 days for over a year. So it is steadily dropping now, which we expected and are finally happy to see. So we measure 96.9 days at the end of the DOL evaluation year at the end of March. National is 253 days for reference. It is a huge contrast. There are still some states which are deeply struggling with their average case age because of the volume of pandemic and post-pandemic appeals, and they really don't have any end in sight, whereas we're having a temporary reprieve in appeals statewide, and so it's allowing us to catch up a little bit. As I reported previously, we met with U.S. Department of Labor before the last meeting, and we'll follow up now that they have our final numbers for the evaluation year on case aging. Looking forward, we anticipate meeting with U.S. Department of Labor at the National Unemployment Insurance Professionals Conference in June, We'll receive some national guidance and some individualized guidance. And then we resume our Region 6 meetings with U.S. Department of Labor end of summer, usually July or August. Judge Bach is going to give you also some very encouraging news, but I would just like to say that U.S. Department of Labor was very pleased with the department's, with the appellate operations trend, and you're quite far ahead of the national averages, as she'll explain. More on U.S. Department of Labor. Assistant Chief Hugh Harrison is going to attend the National Appeals Review Conference next week in Washington, D.C. Much anticipated event. He's going to be one of the veteran members of that group and will provide a lot of leadership to some of the other states with newer leadership in how quality review scoring is conducted nationally. I think I indicated that we don't expect to see any wholesale changes yet. It takes a lot of time for Department of Labor to issue changes to quality review, and with the pandemic, they're still essentially digging out. So they have some that they're scouting right now, and possibly at the next conference, we would anticipate to see some changes. We don't have a lot on the security front lately, but we did have one incident on March 18th in one of our LA Basin offices where an employee on a lunch break was confronted by someone on the street, a stranger, had no connection to CUIAB. Nonetheless, we take that very seriously, and local authorities were contacted, and there were no injuries or continuation of the event reported. So that is a minor blip on an otherwise pretty clear security front this year. That ends my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Sure. I'll open it up for any board members who have questions.
No questions. Thanks for the detailed report.
No.
Member Eng might have a
Yeah,
question.
Member Eng, you have a question?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I just wanted to add to the Vice Chair's comment about appreciation for the great work that's been done. I just had a quick question. I noticed that the number of legacy cases are gradually diminishing. Do we have a foreseeable point in time when we will be switching over completely to CAMs, and what's the reason we haven't done so quite yet?
I think, and this may be echoed by others who are here with us, that the transition is happening naturally much quicker than we realized. I think we thought that we would have more legacy cases for a longer period of time since the Bay Area didn't roll out into CAMs until December. It's coming up quickly, so there are some folks working on a plan for that, and I'll let Mr. Willoughby talk to you a little bit about whether we have a time frame for that yet or whether that's still in development.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that comment, and it is happening naturally. Our focus right now is to make sure that we get the things completed with our stabilization engagement so that the most critical functions get delivered while we still have those resources. And then we know how to make the migration happen. We did have a sort of a hard and fast line in terms of a case that began its life cycle in the legacy system would finish its life cycle there. But it is becoming a quickly diminishing number, but it will be post our engagement with the Department of Technology stabilization vendor for that to happen, which I'll report shortly has been punted a little bit out into the future.
Thank you very much. I just closing comment. There was a day when I did not foresee the ability to transfer from legacy to CAMS. I've been so used to legacy, and now it's the CAMS is so intuitive, and I want to really express my appreciation because I know that switching from one system to another, especially with all the hard copies, the paperwork that's got to be inputted, and so my great appreciation. And so I do foresee a day when I wake up and it will say that we're not having any more legacy cases, and I will be quite tearful about that day. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. With that, we'll move the agenda. We have our supervising administrative law judge for appellate operations here, Rebecca Bach, Judge Bach. So she'll give an update on the state of our appellate workload.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. So I'm going to go over some of the numbers, being that The Department of Labor year just ended, like Vice Chair Kit Monning had mentioned. So the year ends the last day of March and begins anew the first day of April. So true end of the year for those numbers. To meet the Department of Labor numbers, we are to close 50% of our cases in 45 days. And last month, we closed, for the month of March, we closed 19.7% of our cases in 45 days, making our official end of the year number a very reputable 37.2. And per Department of Labor numbers, we're supposed to close 80% in order to meet the numbers, 80% in 75 days. For the month of March, we closed 56.5% of our cases in 75 days, making our official end-of-year number also very reputable, 59.8. So the final number the Department of Labor looks at is our case aging. The hope is to have a case aging number of 40 or less. Our case aging number, official end-of-year case aging number, was 44.1, like was mentioned, so close. Looking a little bit at what the national levels were, nationally speaking, on average, the states closed 40, for second level review only, they closed 42% of their cases in 45 days, 52% of their cases in 75 days, and a telling number, case aging was 165. Our case aging was 44. So those are some of the numbers to consider. Other than that, I think we're moving along and it's going well, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Well, I'll turn to our board members and first to our vice chair. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair Allen. No questions, just big thank you, Supervising Judge Bach, for your leadership. These numbers, especially mentioning the national average, it's great to see how close we made it to the DOL standard. And then thank you for all your work with the ongoing trainings for the board members, and specifically around CAMS, enabling us to do our work as best we can. Thank you.
For your collaboration with that.
Remembering, any comments or questions?
Just kudos. Thank you again for tips and tricks. I'm been going through that and look forward to the training that we'll be receiving, and also for your virtually instantaneous response on an hourly by hourly basis to whenever we have questions or issues on the cases. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I too commend you on the training that we had on tips and tricks. It's like going to continuing education. If you learn one thing, two things is really good. And I've got, thanks to you and Vice Chair Kent Monning on the shortcuts that we can use when we're deliberating on the cases is quite helpful. Thank you.
No, the training was appreciated. I know that for myself, I'm one of the few people who truly love the legacy system and clung to it to the very end. So, but I'm very pleased with the CAM system and the progress we're making with it. One thing I would ask, and maybe I've requested this before, but and I just wanted it for myself and the other board members. I think you, Harrison, a while back, and published all the criteria for quality control that's looked at by the federal government. And I think it was mentioned recently that maybe a few more items were added to it. And I was just wondering if the most recent edition, I think it was like something like 165 factors were looked at. I just would like the board members to have that just for the records, because I think it's interesting because every once in a while I refer to that when I'm looking at cases, and it's helpful.
I can provide that.
Thank you. Well, with that report, we'll move on our agenda. We'll have a report from Jefferson Willoughby, our Chief Information Officer. So take it away, Jefferson.
Well, good morning again, Chair Allen and members of the board. As the IT report this month does include the good news, as mentioned, that our stabilization vendor engagement timeline has been extended through the month of August. So through August 30th. This additional time is going to allow us to deliver the majority of the remaining critical functionality that we need to get into CAMS, including the tax office. There are, of course, many other items sprinkled amongst those critical releases, including enhancements to document generation, scheduling, and usability improvements just generally that should help make both field and appellate operations flow more smoothly. Release meeting, and if I could look at my watch on the hand that I can't move right now, it would tell me that there is a meeting that probably has wrapped by now involving the release, the upcoming release. And I may even have an email stating what is going to be released here in the very near future. There are so many small and large things that are happening in terms of printing, and I know that we're trying to believe that we're getting away from the era of printing, but we still print several things, and just general usability. I also promised an update on language access in the public portal last month, and Vietnamese remains closest to completion. We've unfortunately had a small spate of emergency fixes that have come up, and that has taken time away from our testing and rolling that out. So I'll continue to report on it as we get these languages queued up and closer to release in the public portal. We are going as quickly as we can. So with that, that's my report for this month, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Jefferson. So I would turn to our board members. Member Kent Monty, any questions?
No questions. Just thank you for the update, Jefferson.
Member Eng, any questions? Comment?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Willoughby, thanks again for your report and also for the great work done on CAMS. I just had a question. You referenced the language access, which is extremely important, as are the other parts of interface with CAMS. Which languages right now are meeting that threshold of including interpret translations for certain documents, in addition to Spanish?
Vietnamese, Mandarin, and Cantonese. So anyone can correct me. Those are the ones that are currently queued up. Or traditional and simplified Chinese. Maybe I said that incorrectly. I have been corrected on that before.
Okay, thank you.
Member Wachowski.
I have nothing, no questions.
Yeah, I have one question, and maybe it's for Judge Kutry, maybe for our IT staff. With the tax cases, is there any reason why the tax cases would have any different technological challenges than our other kind of cases? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, they do. Unlike unemployment, PUA, disability, all the other programs that we administer, tax starts with a petition filed with CUIAB. So that's a huge change from waiting for the EDD to send us the appeal documents when they receive the appeal. So it involves a whole lot of front-end processing that we don't have to do on any of our other programs. And then there's a whole host of correspondence and transmissions that originate from the arrival of a petition that are not common to our unemployment process. So there's a lot of automation that needs to go on the front end so that everybody gets the proper notices, and they have to be created totally separately from unemployment. So that's why we kept it till the end. You know, we could have done it first as a sort of a test, but we opted to keep it until the end because it's just so different. Now, that said, a lot of what we've learned along the way will improve the tax petition rollout, but it's distinctly different. Once you get to hearing, it's pretty much the same. We'll be able to utilize all of our bases for that. It's a lot different from the front end.
So just another question. When we see our backlog of cases, are the tax cases included in the backlog, or are they discrete, another group that we'll be looking at later in terms of how many tax cases we have?
They're in our total inventory.
The total inventory.
And then we've been referring to for the last couple of years to our unemployment and pandemic inventory, because that's the one that is so deeply pressing for people.
Right.
One, for people's benefits, and two, because of the U.S. Department of Labor's close tracking of those statistics. We have been working on tax cases all along to keep the petitions incoming and having conferences, and a lot of them settle. And we've also been doing hearings in them too, but we have a small dedicated group of retired annuitant judges who are working on those cases to keep them afloat. Inevitably, after periods of high unemployment workload, we have to pivot and catch up on some of the tax work. But right now, we have limited resources in that arena, and we do expect that to sort of shift as we continue to burn through the backlog in unemployment.
So I remember we had the same situation after the Great Recession where we had these tax cases, and then we had a special unit. Will we need any kind of special allocation of funds to do these tax cases?
We received that, and so we've been using it. The folks that we have who are working in the tax unit, the retired annuitants, are working extensively to keep afloat. We had the good fortune between the two economic events of the early 2010s and the COVID-19 pandemic to cross-train a lot of our field judges in tax. So as opposed to growing out a whole new unit in tax, we probably will just move some of that work to local field offices and have it heard there. And there's still a really healthy population of those folks who are ready and willing to do tax work.
Well, thank you. That's good to know. Thank you. So now we have a report from Robert Silva, otherwise known as Bobby Silva by me, Chief Administrative Services Officer. So you want to give us an update?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, board members. I have an update on two different administrative issues. The first being an update with regard to hiring. Since the last board meeting, we had a slight increase in some recruitment activity, and we've had 3 new support staff employees join us. One in the Office of Tax Petitions, which I believe starts this coming Monday, one in our Inglewood office, and one in our Oxnard office. We have a couple of name clearances pending for San Diego and the Bay Area. And for both, we're currently working with the selected candidates to ensure they meet the minimum qualifications. There's a little wrinkle with regard to both of them, so we're trying to get that taken care of so we can bring them aboard as well. The overall statewide push for the last several years in support staff recruitment is kind of beginning to slow down as we've seen some decreases in the incoming workload. More importantly, as has been reported several times, our ability to move the workload within CAMS has really provided a boost to us when we have geographic imbalances in the ability to recruit in certain offices. Currently, we have 15 support recruitments pending, and we will continue to monitor them in concert with these workload fluctuations or decreases. I have a purchasing update, and that is today is actually our fiscal year deadline to submit purchase orders for operating expenses, equipment and supplies. With the deficit, the $58 billion projected state deficit at the time of the January 10th budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year, and then the alleged analyst office reporting that could expand to as much as a $73 billion deficit that we're facing, we realize that for the first time in a long time, there could be a delay in enacting the 24-25 state budget. So with today's deadline looming, we sent communications to all the CUIAB offices last week to make sure they submit their requests for larger ticket items by today's deadline that will outfit their offices with their needs through the month of August 2024, which is when we project we'll again be able to purchase larger ticket items. So and they're rolling in as we speak. So we're trying to process them all today. I don't see any problems with that. Offices still will be able to order smaller ticket items using the state, it's a Cal card, through May 10th. And then we'll also be able to purchase a reduced amount of Cal card items through June 17th of the fiscal year. But they have, Cal cards have transactional and monthly limits, so it's really only small items we're able to purchase using the Cal cards. So today's deadline is very important to get these purchases taken care of, to get us through, again, at the end of August. All of these purchases obviously fall within, they have to fall within the additional approval process because of the purchasing freeze that's been in effect since February. So I'm today frantically working with management to make sure that I can attest to the necessity of all the items that are being purchased today by the deadline. And that is my brief report. Happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you. So board members, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Chief Silva.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess my question would be is, since we're scanning so many things now and we're adding to that, what's the state of the scanners with CUIAB?
State of the scanners is that they're just fine. Yeah, I've been working with Chief Willoughby because some offices for the upcoming fiscal year have requested scanners for this very purpose, and I've worked with IT to see how many, if any, we'll need to bring in next fiscal year, and he has assured me that as far as the canon that we have now, we're in good shape with regard to scanners.
Yes. Member Ring, any comments, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Silva, again, for all the good work that you and your staff does. I just had a quick question. Understand that very recently there's been a change for a requirement of in-person employment, in-person reporting to our state workers, and I wanted to know whether this would have any impact on CUIAB in terms of our availability of office space and maintenance, et cetera, et cetera.
We have planned meetings with Labor Agency in the coming days to discuss the specifics about the June 17th governor's order deadline for the return to office, hybrid telework. But looking ahead, we don't project to have any space issues with regard to whether it's hearing rooms or support staff space. We should be able to toggle that just fine as we did prior to the pandemic.
Okay, and I assume that you'll keep us informed on a monthly basis as we go into that new enactment, or actually when actually people do report June and after. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. So I'll turn to our board counsel, Mark Wusam, and ask him, is there any pending matters that need to be discussed in closed session?
Thank you, Chair Allen. We do not.
Well, then thankfully I will adjourn this meeting.